Hello, welcome to another Knowledge Odyssey book review. These book reviews are here to educate me and others by obtaining helpful knowledge and relating the information to our current lives. I hope you enjoy this book review. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Today's book review will be on the book called Master Your Emotions, A Practical Guide to Overcome Negativity and Better Manage Your Feelings by Thibaut Meurisse, published in 2018. Thibaut is the author of over 20 books about practical self-help. His mission is to help ordinary people attain extraordinary results. This book is the first from his Mastery series with 9 books in the collection. I became interested in the series after reading this book. I have gained so much knowledge from this book, and I hope you will take an interest in this series from this book review. This book consists of 4 parts, and I will discuss it by its parts to shorten the length of this video. Part 1 is named What Emotions Are. It consists of the book's first 3 chapters. Thibaut starts by explaining how emotions occur, stating that our brain is designed for survival. Since we do not encounter the same dangers as before, we react differently to life events. He uses fear of rejection as an example. Rejection poses a minor risk. However, it affects our minds to respond to it in a way it affects us negatively. When we do great things and one bad thing happens, it affects us more without thinking about all the good that has already occurred. He states that we must separate real threats from imaginary ones. In this case, rejection is not a real threat that should impact us as severely as we usually allow it to be. He reminds us that our brain's job is not to make us happy. It is all about survival, and it looks for ways to keep us out of harm's way. We must control those emotions rather than try to maintain happiness all the time, which would only lead us to failure. He talks about how dopamine plays a role in our happiness and suggests that we must determine how we obtain dopamine and control it to counter any emotions that may lead us down the wrong path. For example, social media produces dopamine for most people today. We should strive to limit our time on it and find other ways to obtain dopamine that only better ourselves. He tells us that we shouldn't use the "one day I will" statement because it will only bring temporary happiness. We quickly acclimate to new situations and environments. Therefore, once we achieve what we want, the joy will eventually fade, and we will be looking for more. The key takeaway is that our attitude towards life influences our happiness, not what happens to us. Next, he talks about how our ego is why we want things and why we act the way we do, and so on. He states that our ego is created through our thoughts. It is our mind-created identity. It is the thing that tells us that we want materialistic items, high-paying jobs, or whatever our lives desire. He mentions that our life events are what create our ego's identity. While these life events mean nothing, once we allow these life events to bother us, it then becomes something. An example he gave was that when people criticize us for our beliefs, we become defensive. He mentions that our egos are just like our brains because it's all about survival. Our ego persuades us to go out and get what we need to survive. In today's environment, this may mean acquiring an education to find a high-paying career, or saving up for retirement. He states that our ego does not just want something. Everything we choose to have must have a reason. Think about many of the things you have now, and you probably have a story behind why you have that item. This is what your ego wants you to do. He states that this only becomes a negative issue when we become overly attached to these materialistic things. It is okay to have something we desire. He gives examples of how our ego affects our lives differently. I discussed 2 that he mentions. The first is our friends or acquaintances. We expect them to provide something to us that could help us improve our lives, wisdom or support, for example. This includes attempting to get approval from others whether it's parents, significant others, or anyone else important to us. Couples are another one he mentions, and he wants us to know that loneliness is not cured by human company. When we start to realize that we do not need anyone, we start to enjoy the company of those we love. He further dives into ego by listing what we do in our daily lives that feed our ego. These things could be manifesting an inferiority complex, hiding our desires to be better than others, looking for fame, complaining, believing that we are right and others are wrong, and seeking attention. Ultimately, he shares that our ego impacts emotions. And once we understand how our egos affect our emotions and who we are, we can control our egos to have more control over our lives. Next, he focuses on our emotions. He reiterates that we cannot always be happy, and this thinking will only lead to failure in attempting to do so. This causes us to think negative thoughts about never getting better in life. He states that we must overcome this idea and accept that emotions will come and go. He also says that negative emotions should not be considered harmful. This is because we need negative emotions or unexpected life events to occur to help us understand what we must do to grow and be better. One of my favorite things he mentions is that emotions are not what causes suffering, but rather how we interpret those emotions is what causes the suffering. Think of these negative emotions as a wake-up call to help us reach the next level we desire. They serve as a sign to help us understand what is wrong and what we may need to change in our lives to make it better. He makes a great analogy of how negative emotions and life events are like spells. It is hard for us to get out of this negative spell cast upon us. However, with practice, we can learn to quickly get out of the spell before it does more harm than good. We will always have negative spells cast upon us. It's unavoidable, but we must continue to practice breaking out of those negative spells. If we cannot break through the negative spell, it will influence our lives in the long run. He further explains that emotions are like magnets. We tend to think about other negative thoughts when in a bad mood, and positive thoughts when we're in a good mood. However, it is challenging to have the opposite feeling, whether it's good or bad. Lastly, he mentions that problems don't exist if we don't focus on them. They only live in the past or future, never in the present, and they are only a problem when labeled as one. It is up to us to control how we determine what is considered a problem. In part 2, he explains what impacts our emotions. The following 7 chapters in this section involve what affects our emotions and how to improve on each of them. These 7 things are sleeping habits, using our bodies, thoughts, and words to influence our emotions, how we breathe, our environments, and how our music affects our emotions. We all know how we can get if we do not have enough sleep to make it through the day. It leads us to becoming less productive than we usually would be. This is probably one of the more common things that impact our emotions daily. Next, he states that our bodies, thoughts, and words influence our emotions. He suggests that we exercise and adjust our postures to bring a positive outlook to our bodies. Meditate and visualize our thoughts to focus more on the positive experiences. For example, if a person aspires to earn more cash, they could imagine what they can do with that money and visualize it. Furthermore, meditation will allow you to become aware of your thoughts and distance yourself from them. Next, he states that we must use our words wisely to train the mind to think confidently and positively. Instead of saying words like "I hope" or "I'll try," we should start saying words like "Absolutely," "I will do this," or "I am positive." Next, he suggests that we focus on our breathing. He explains different breathing patterns that change our mood and gives us ways to control it. Our environments are also something that affects our moods, because we may be in a negative atmosphere that keeps our emotions in a particular state. Lastly, he mentions music because music strongly connects with our feelings. We all know songs that would change our emotions depending on how we feel. He suggests that we put on music that will boost our moods to keep us from feeling negative. In part 3, he explains how to change our emotions by starting with how emotions are formed. He states that the two types of negative emotions are the ones we experience spontaneously, like the fear of something, or the negative emotions we create in our mind by identifying with our thoughts. When we think negatively, it has the potential to grow stronger if we hold it inside. He mentions that it is all based on three things: interpreting the event, identifying and analyzing that it is there, and replaying it repetitively in our minds. This creates the strong emotions that we continue to hold in our minds. In short, he states that our emotions are not who we are. They are only temporary, and we cannot make our emotions out to be what we are. We must change our environments, become aware of our feelings, move away from negativity, increase our energy, and condition our minds. He explains each solution to change our emotions, which can be used as reminders to help us prepare our minds to think positively. Lastly, part 4, he talks about using our emotions to grow. He provides information for recording our feelings, avoiding doubt, being defensive, being stressed or worried, learn not to care what people think of us, resentment, jealousy, and several others. All of these topics are discussed by explaining how they are caused and what we can do to solve them. I'll end this by giving you what my areas of improvement are, which are not being good enough, stress and worry, and procrastination. However, the root cause is due to not being good enough. When I believe I am not good enough, I always look for ways to improve myself. When I achieve something, I do not think it is enough, and I search for something more to work on. When taking up opportunities, worry and procrastination arise, and I start to doubt myself. Ultimately, I will either start on it late or won't do it at all, causing me to miss out on great opportunities. I was already aware of this, but this helped me further improve myself by giving me tips and tools to prevent my emotions from allowing me to miss opportunities in the future. In the end, this is an excellent book for people who have trouble removing their emotions quickly to focus on what they should be doing. I highly recommend anyone that is struggling with emotions to pick up this book and study it. Regardless of giving you a book summary, it should be studied to ensure that we are reminded to not let our emotions control how we move through life. Let's control our emotions and keep them in motion, as the author says. Do not let them stick around and become who we are, because they can't be unless you allow them to do so. Thank you for listening to this book review. Give this book a read and tell me if you enjoyed reading it as much as I did. As always, please like and subscribe for more content, and remember to continue to educate yourself to educate others. Until next time.